and we should be live. Welcome everyone. I'll just give it a minute to see if you are actually here. Cool, you should be there. If anyone was completely new to me, this is a live from the streets of London. We'll be starting in 10 minutes. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So if you are watching the replay in the next few days, if you wanted to skip the hellos, you might want to skip the next 10 minutes. I'm Mitzi, and you can hear me well. Perfect. Thank you very much, Tish. So we've got about 10 minutes to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. Let us know in the chat where you're tuning from. We still have time. So it is nearly 7:30 p.m. UK time in London. To polish me? What do you mean? Yeah, I wish I had taken a jumper. It was very warm earlier, but not anymore. Hi Natasha, nice to see you here. So we've got 9 minutes. Yeah, I'm wearing my orange because I'm wearing my Mr. Monopoly jumper, t-shirt. There he is. So at least if you see people staring at me on the street, they'll know exactly what I'm up to. Well, they should guess. Hi Lethargy. Welcome Emma. Hello again Catherine. So we've got about 8 minutes to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So again, if any of you are watching this in the next few days and you want to go straight into the tour, you can skip the next 8 minutes. Someone is trying to steal a car. It's not me. Welcome everyone that just joined. We've got about 7 minutes to go. Fabulous short, says Laurie. Thank you. Who said they don't need polishing? You never know. So I've got my hat as well, of course, with my little Uncle Richie penny bag. And welcome down. Nice to see you here. So we've got, let me see, 8 minutes to go. You love the hellos. Cool. Yeah, it's nice to have a bit of time to just to see who's here and get to know any newbies, if any. If anyone was completely new to me, let us know in the chat. It's always nice to see a few new names. So we've got about 6 minutes to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. You might see it's a weird angle behind me because I'm actually sat on the floor. There's no... well, actually, Islington is the borough of London with the least green open spaces. So I couldn't really wait in a park or anything like that. Exactly. When they first were created, the alarms, people were concerned when they went off. Now no one cares. Let me see, 7 minutes. So tonight we are going into Angel Islington. Let me see if I've got the little card. Yes. This. So, for those of you that don't know, if any of you were completely new to me, with those Monopoly tours, what happens is that I go live at home and I throw the dice on the Monopoly board, and this time they've picked Angel. So tonight we're going for a live walk around Angel and Islington. We'll take a look at local property prices, and I'll also tell you about some dark history and some dark story in the area. So we've got a bit of a true crime as well. So it's more Monopoly and murders, really. And tonight we've got some shocking stories coming up. So it is again the Angel Islington. It's not a street, it's named after a pub, actually. Most of the streets on the Monopoly board are named after a street. Angel was a pub, and it is now a train station as well, tube station. Welcome anyone that just joined. We still have a few minutes before to start. You love to be shocked. Good. Good, good. Otherwise, you'd have to close your ears. Let me see. Yeah, 5 minutes to go. Let me gracefully stand up. And I'll show you a glimpse of the view already, just in case if you were a bit bored of my face. You're not shocked that Tish loves to be shocked. You don't remember doing that area before? Well, we've never been on this street, Glory. We've been to Angel. I actually have another tour in Angel, but we'll try to cover some different streets because I don't want to take you to places we've been before. So I've come up with a route that we've not done before. So even if you've been to Angel with me, different locations. You don't recommend Natalie's tour if you're squeamish. Well, no, if you're squeamish, you don't want to. Well, some of my tours are okay. Some of them. It is indeed a beautiful place, and it is now a very famous place. I'll tell you why in a moment. Let me show you the view over here. Oh, you like the shock effect? Yes, perfect. So we should be 3 minutes away. 3 minutes to go. Does anyone know where we are exactly? Did anyone recognize the place? If you do, let us know in the chat. You just had an ad about coping with anxiety. Just after someone said you didn't mind being shocked. Yeah. Yeah, those ads can be random or well targeted, it depends. The light is lovely. Yeah, the sun is going down, so sunset should be in 10 minutes. So the light is beautiful at this time. And then we should finish after dark. So we've got, no, I'm not in Colebrook Row. No. Well, the architecture might be a bit similar, but so we've got 1 minute to go. Hi, Dennis and Martin. Welcome. Nice to see you here. And we've got 1 minute before it's officially time to start. So it's going to be 7:30 p.m. UK time in London, and sunset is at 7:41, I think, today, or 40 something. So we're just 10 minutes before sunset. And it is officially time to start. So welcome everyone. Without further ado, let's flip this camera around and let me show you where we are. We are on Claremont Square. So this little square has become very famous in the last, well, really in the last 17 years. 17? Yeah, I think that was 2007, because of a movie. That's a shame that Linda B is not here. She would have probably recognized it. This lovely set of terrace houses, it's been featured in Harry Potter. So from number 23 here to number 29, that was 12 Grimmauld Place in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So if you've seen the movie, you might remember at the beginning of the movie, poor little Harry is being evicted or expelled, I should say, from Hogwarts. And some of these teachers, they come and pick him up. They end up here on Claremont Square. They come out of the railings here. They cross over the street. They look at these beautiful buildings. And then suddenly, so they're looking at the building, and the building kind of split away from one another, and then another house appear in the middle magically, and that's the house of the Order of the Phoenix. Let me show you a picture from the movie. Right, so there we go. So that's the famous headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix in Harry Potter. Now, I'm not a Harry Potter fan at all, irony. But I'd love to live here for one simple reason. Then I could have a Lego set of my own house. Look, so you can have a Lego set of Claremont Square or 12 Grimmauld Place in the movie. So that's quite cool. Now let me remove that. And on the square itself, see the level of the grass is much higher than the level of the ground. Do you know why? Why is the square a bit of a hill? Any guesses? So the level of the square is much higher than the pavement. Why? I've asked that question before in some of my tours, but the answer is not actually the same this time. What do you think is hiding underneath this little hill? Or this little square hill? No, it's not a plague pit this time. No dead bodies. No, it's not a graveyard. It's not a cemetery. Lots of dead. No, it's actually a water. It's actually a water reservoir. Would you believe? It's not a burial ground. No, it's we had a river here. Well, it's not a river, but we had a water supply known as the New River. Now, the New River is a bit confusing because it's not new. It's about 400 years old, and it's not a river. It's basically man-made, or was man-made. We've seen a little bit of the New River together when we went to Clissold Park. You might remember in Clissold there are some huge water reservoir, and there's the last little bit of the New River that you can still see. The rest of it from Stoke Newington to here has been covered up. But underneath the hill there, you still have the Upper Pond Reservoir, that was created at the very beginning of the 18th century. So that was basically to supply some water to London, and to have some water for drinking or for everyone. And that was actually the new river created at the time of James I, would you believe? The project came to light at the time of Queen Elizabeth II, but they didn't do anything until later on. So it's basically a man-made river that comes down all the way from Hertfordshire to London. So that was to supply water to London. And the reservoir here, after the cholera epidemics of the 1850s, they had to cover it up. You know, they did not really want open water to be facing the air, so they covered it up. And it's still used today by Thames Water, and it's actually a grade 2-star listed structure. So we're not allowed to touch the reservoir anyway. It is protected. Oops, sorry, it's a bit noisy. So I'm on the Pentonville Road, which is technically part of the Monopoly Board as well. So we might have to come here one day. On the side where I stand here, we're just out of the congestion charge zone. So if you drive on this street here, you don't have to pay. If you were on my right, there'll be a charge. So every day, if you wanna drive inside of the congestion charge zone, I think it's between 8 to 6 p.m. on a weekday, you'd have to pay. So it's about £15 a day. Now, let's start straight away with some properties for you. So across the street, right above the charity shop there, that's an accommodation with a lot of students living inside. And there's one room in a flat share. So how much would you pay for one bedroom there? Let me show you the inside. Oh, so there actually are two rooms in the same flat share, but I've picked the cheapest one. So I'm not sure which one it is on the photo, but the cheapest one out of the two, how much would you pay for a monthly rent? So we're looking for a monthly rent. How much do you think you'd have to pay monthly to live in that very building above the Farah charity shop? I used to love that charity shop. They always had some great second-hand items. But nowadays, the charity shops, they have a lot of crappy items, because I think a lot of people have started to sell their clothes online, you know, on Vinted and stuff. So the charity shops are not as well supplied. Genevieve, you're very, very close. Natasha says 5K, it's a bit less. Tish, you're very close as well. When we said charity shops, by the way, it's a second-hand shop. The clothes are not for charity, it's the income of the business that would go and help the charity. Down, it's a little bit less. 950 mid-sea. Well, you know what? There was another bedroom I did not select that was about 950, but I did not select it because they had no pictures on the ad. Cool, you guys are good, you guys are very close. Let me show you the answer. So it's actually a weekly rent, but if you do the average monthly, that's 1,271 for the cheapest one. So so some of you were quite close. Let me remove the pictures. Oops. One sec. And I've got another one in one of these. I'm not able to tell you exactly which one because they all look the same. But in one of these buildings, I've got a 2-bedroom flat for you to rent. So how much would you pay for a full apartment in this one here? I'll show you the inside and I'll start moving at the same time. So we're looking for a monthly rent for a 2-bedroom flat in this one. You don't think they'll let you live there? Well, I think it's mainly students, but you know. So monthly rent for a 2-bedroom flat. Bear in mind, we're very central. We're very close to King's Cross Station and right in front of Angel. So monthly rent, mid-sea says 3,200. You're not too far. It's a little less, but 3K says Michelle. You guys are getting very good at this game. It's a tiny little bit less, but it's not too far. Tish says 350, it's a bit less. Let's wait for more guesses. Down, you're not too far either. Laurie, it's a bit more. Let me show you the answer. If you ever think I go too quick, by the way, in those Monopoly, let me know if you want more time. Yeah, so 2,707. Oh, Geneviève, you're very, very near, like 25 pounds. Oh, you guys are really good, yes. Cool, let me remove that. Cool. So, I'm now by Angel. This building, well, this used to be a bank until a few months ago. Sadly, we're losing a lot of our banks in the country because a lot of people are expected to do online banking, but it's not really fair on the older generation because there are a lot of people that are still alive and they're not confident on the internet, and that you know, in some little towns sometimes they don't have their bank anymore, so they have to rely on their kids or anyone that can help. So yeah, it's sad that oh, hold on, what did you say you are by the Union Chapel today, Kurt? Might run into you. Okay, let's cross over. So yeah, this building used to be a bank, and inside of the bank they had a little plaque. Let me show you. So that was quite cool. So until a few months ago in this building, when you got into the bank, they had a plaque to remember the Monopoly. Because what happened is, it used to be a pub. It used to be a coaching inn that was called the Sheepcote, and then eventually it was renamed the Angel because they had a large illustration of Mary on the last Thursday, okay, and Mary on the Angel of Annunciation. You know, what's his name? Gabriel, I think. So there was an illustration of the Angel, and eventually it became known as the Angel Inn. It was one of those big coaching inn. This pub used to be a Wetherspoons until a few months ago, but now it's a fancy pub. And the inn was, you know, for a lot of people on their way down to London to spend their last night in an inn. There's an illustration from William Hogarth of the Angel Inn. Let me show you. Apparently they had free water from the New River Company, you know, when they dug the New River, because the Co-op Bank, I saw it, Kurt, in the corner, but it's not actually open yet. And nowadays you get those banks that don't have a cash facility anyway. What's the point of having a bank if you don't have a cash facility? The HSBC does that a lot, because sometimes people give me old money as a tip, you know, those old paper notes, and when I try to change them at the bank, they're like, no, we don't have a cash facility. But you are a bank. Anyway, so the Angel Inn, that was a pub, and the name of the station across the street, the station was named after the pub. So see, that's Angel Station across the street. We have in London, I think it's 6 stations that were named after a pub, tube stations. We have Swiss Cottage, we have Elephant Castle, Manor House, Medieval, and Royal Oak. I think that's 6. So Angel is one of them. And yeah, the bank, it's I think it's this one. I think it's the cooperative that used to be there. So I think they've moved here, but they don't seem to be open quite yet. And so yeah, the guy that created the Monopoly, not created, but that did the English version of the Monopoly, Victor Watson, he came with his secretary, Marjorie. They spent a day in London. They were trying to find some locations that they might want to put on the board. Out of a day, they just picked some random locations, and then they came for a tea here. So where the pub was, there was a tea room, and because they had a lovely tea, they decided to put it on the board, as simple as that. And that's why the bank, they had this little plaque to remember the pub and to honor their link to the Monopoly. So whatever new establishment opens inside, I hope they keep the plaque to remember the Monopoly links. Now, Angel Station, we're not going to go inside of the station, but they have the longest escalator in London. It is apparently 10 meters longer than the Nelson column. So that's a very long escalator indeed. So this is the Liverpool Road, but we're going the other side. I shouldn't go, but let's do this. Oops. So to my right over here, you've got a shopping center. And at the back of the shopping center, there's a little street called Parkfield Street. The street is still there, but a lot of the buildings have been destroyed. We're not gonna go through because, well, I don't want to be kicked out anyway. I've had enough of securities kicking me out these days because, they don't really want you filming in a shopping center anyway. But yeah, that little street at the back was the site of a horrible, horrible murder in 1895. Now, it's quite a shocking story. There was a family that lived there, a lady and all her kids with her husband. She had many kids, but the youngest one was called Sidney Victor. He was 2 years old and 3 months. So Ellen, the mother, was there at home. Her husband Henry had gone to work, and Ellen she had something to do at home. So she wanted to keep the little boy busy as she was doing whatever she had to do. So she took the little boy across the street to a fruit and veg little stall. She went to buy a bag of dates because the little boy he loved his dates, and he really enjoyed sitting on the doorstep. Apologies, it's a bit noisy with traffic here, but don't worry, it's going to be much quieter in a moment. So the little boy really enjoyed being sat at the doorstep and watch the world go by. Today, I know we probably would never leave our kids there, but back in the day, in the 19th century, kids were on the streets all the time. So the little boy sat there with his dates, and 10 minutes later he comes back inside to he offered a nice juicy date to his mother. So Helen grabbed one, she said thank you, and the little boy went back to the doorstep. And a few minutes later, he's back again with a big pear of fruit. Someone had given him a pear. Today, if someone gave a pear to your kid, you'd be like, what? Ooh, huh? But the mummy grabbed the pear because a little part of the pear was a bit blemish. So she removed the bruised part of the pear. She gave the pear back to the little boy. The little boy went back to sit on the doorstep. And Mummy Ellen, she looked again through the window. She could see her little boy's legs as he was eating his pear. Nothing to worry about. That was about 9:45 in the morning. 10:20, one of the neighbors, two doors down, a little Harriet. She was 14 years old. She was a servant. She went to the toilets in the back garden. You know, at the time you had the gardens, the toilets in the garden, and they'll be shared with all the lodgers, you know. And as she sat on the loo, she heard a big dump. Not her own poo, I mean a big dump. And so it's not funny. But so yes, she heard this big noise. So she actually ran out, and she saw that someone had dumped a little mannequin on the dustbin outside. So she ran inside to her master, Mr. Kurt, and she screamed. Not Kurt, Kirk. She screamed, "Oh, there's someone that dropped a mannequin outside on the dustbin." So the master came out, and to his horror, he found the body of a dead little boy. The body was still warm, so he took the little boy inside, and he of course sent the little Harriet to fetch a police officer and a doctor. So the little Harriet is running down the street when she almost bumped into Helen, her neighbor from 2 doors down. And she was crying, of course, the little Harriet. So Helen was like, "Oh, what's happening? Why are you crying?" And the little Harriet was like, there's a dead baby in my garden. And poor Helen had just discovered her little boy was missing. So she went, "Good God, could it be mine?" And of course, Mr. Kirk heard that. So he invited Helen inside to look at the little boy. And very sadly, it was hers. So of course, everyone is panicking. The police arrived. So they lived at number... They lived at number 42. The toilets with Harriet was number 40, so they had to check number 41 because the body was dumped from the back garden. So really, it would make sense to check the house in between them. And the police came to search the house. It belonged to Mrs. Borges. She was at work. Pretty much a lot of people lived into that house, but all of them were at work. Now, little pause in the story to show you that. So we are on top of the Islington tunnel for the canal. So the canal is running underneath us. So the Regent's Canal is underneath us. The Regent's Canal is about 9 miles, but a lot of it is hidden here, between here and King's Cross. And let me show you this street. So you've got Duncan Terrace here on one side. So this part of the street here has one name, and the other side has another name, because in the middle, this little park, that was the site of the New River. So now it's all dried up, but the New River used to come down this way. And the canal is underneath us. So the New River at some point was running above the canal, because the New River is older than the Regent's Canal. And talking about the canal, let's go down. So this one is called Brook Row. So you see you've got two sides of the street with two different names. On Duncan Terrace, by the way, that's where a lady we might mention again in a little while, Rosina Field, she was a murder victim. She lived on that street there. We'll talk about her in a little while, probably. So yeah, let's go down towards the canal. So the canal, we talked about it in some of my tours before, like when we were in Camden and stuff. So that was for transporting goods. I'll get back to the story. Don't worry, I've not forgotten about little Sydney. So the goods would be transported on. Yeah, we're not going to talk about Joe Horton today, Kurt. I'm literally on the parallel, so I wanted to avoid Neil Road because I don't want this tour to be too similar to my other tour in Angel. If any of you had missed the other tour, if I remember, I'll put it in the link description so you can watch it as well. But I tried really hard to have a different route. Anyway, so if you remember what we talked about when we talked about the canal in some of my tours before, the horses would be dragging the boats on the canal side. So the horses would be exactly where I am now. The boats, they had no power. They were only horsepower. So when they got into a tunnel like this, what do you think they did? You didn't have a towpath, so the horse couldn't drag the boats anymore. So they had to come up with another solution. What they did is they'll place a plank perpendicular to the boat at the front of the boat, and two of the boatmen would lay down on their side on the plank, and they'll be pushing the boat with their feet. So their feet would be on the canal tunnel walls, if that makes sense. That's how we got the expression, apparently, to leg it. Let me show you. I'm not sure I'm making sense, so I've got a couple of illustrations so you can get an idea. Where are we? Hold on, let me find those images. There we go. So they'll be legging it, so they'll push the boat with their legs. This is not the canal here, by the way, on the photo. I think that's in West Yorkshire, but that's an illustration of how they were doing it. So they'll be laying down on their canal boat and pushing the boat with their feet. So they'll be legging it. Anyway, so this is the beautiful Regent's Canal. Let me remove the photo. I'm not going to tell you too much about the canal because, of course, we've been here before in my other tour. Now, let's get back to our poor little Sydney. So everyone now is looking at number 40. The lady, Mrs. Burgess, she was away, but her husband, Joseph, was there. The police wanted to inspect the property. What I didn't tell you is that the cause of death of the little boy was quite obvious. They had found in his throat, shoved in his mouth and in his throat, lots of newspaper that was from the Daily Telegraph from the 12th of September of that year. The newspaper had been cut in little squares. Now that's what they used to do to use it as toilet paper. So if they found the toilets that was using the newspaper from that date, they'll know where the murder happened. And as they checked the house at number 40, they went down to the toilets. In the toilets, they found little items of clothing that belonged to the poor little boy, as well as the newspaper that was being used as a toilet tissue. It was the Daily Telegraph from 12th of September. So they had the location. They knew where the murder had happened. Then Joseph, the gentleman that was there, he was like, "Oh, good God, I'm innocent," which was a bit odd because no one had accused him yet. I'm going to try not to say anything too interesting here in case I lose the signal under the tunnel. So I'm just going to wait a second. Beautiful view. There we go. We are out of the tunnel, so we should be all good. So yeah, Joseph is like, "Oh, I'm innocent. He was not accused then, but when Mrs. Burgess came back, she was a fruit seller on Chapel Street. She said that there was another person that had the key to the house and that had been there that morning for a delivery. That was our little assistant, 16 years old. His name was Alfred. Sorry, there's a bicycle. His name was Alfred. Alfred what? Oh, Gamble. Alfred Gamble. He was only 16, and he had been working with her. He had the keys to the home, and he had been in there in the morning to bring some fruits and bring them back to our market stall. And well, obviously everyone was looking at little Albert. He did admit that he had been there, and he did admit that he had given the pear to the little boy. But remember, after the pear was given to the boy, the mother saw her boy again. So if the killer gave him the pear, he would have had to come back. So everyone at that point is suspecting little Albert, but He's 16 years old, he's an innocent boy, and he had been on time, so he went back to the market stall, after the delivery time. So, they didn't have any evidence against him until a few months later. Very sadly, another boy was taken in Angel. He was 3 years old. He was found. His name was William, little William Cattle. He was found in a stable. Luckily, he was saved, so he did not die. But he was found in a stable, and guess who the stable belonged to? It belonged to Mrs. Borges. So this time, everyone looked at Alfred. Alfred was seen by some doctors, and they concluded that he was insane. Apologies for the term, but the doctors at the time, they said he was a congenital imbecile. So he could not go, he wasn't fit for trial. So he was sent to Broadmoor. Now, we've spoken about Broadmoor in my last tour at the Tower Hamlet Cemetery. We talked about the little Robert Coombe, the little boy that killed his mother. 13 years old. He was the youngest inmate at Broadmoor. Well, he was followed a couple of years later by another teenage boy. It's of course Albert Gamble. So the two of them were at Broadmoor at the same time. So very, very sad story, and really to us today it seems almost inconceivable to leave your boy on the doorstep, but well, you didn't have many cars at the time. All the horse and carriages were not actually any safer. We might talk about that in a moment. For now, let's leave the canal and we'll go into St. Peter's Road, because we have another murder there at number 81. Now the next one is also quite shocking as well. At number 81, we had a couple that lived there. It was a married couple. The gentleman was much older. He was in his 60s, and his wife was like 40 years younger than him. They lived on this street over here, and they were into the habit of going for breakfast at the ladies' mother's place. I think I've missed something in the chat. So every morning, Thomas, his name is Thomas Neal, not to be confused with Thomas Neal Crane, the Lambeth poisoner. No, it's another Thomas Neal. So every morning, Thomas and Teresa, his wife, they'll go for breakfast, at the table of the mother-in-law, Esther Gray. And that very morning, Thomas arrived at his mother-in-law's place just before 9, and Teresa wasn't there. He went in the living room and he grabbed a hammer and he told Mrs. Gray, "I'll be back in a moment. I've got a quick job to do before, and we'll come back, of course, with Teresa." Mrs. Gray is like, "Yeah, fine," and she's waiting, and they never came back. Now, after a while, she's a bit worried. So she sent her son Henry to go and check what was happening with Teresa and why they were not coming. And well, that's when the little Henry went down the street and he spotted a massive amount of people in front of Teresa's house. She had been brutally attacked. She was on the floor in a pool of blood. The police was already running around looking for Thomas Neal, and she died. She was already dead when Henry saw it. So eventually they caught Thomas, and all he had to say to the police was like, "Yeah, give me a warm prison cell, please. I need to be warm." And there's a motive that kind of emerged for him. A few months earlier, he had an altercation with Mrs. Gray's mother-in-law, and he had cut a bit of her forehead. So there was an inquest, and he had been sent to jail for a few months. as he was in jail, do you have more ads than usual? That's weird. I didn't do anything different. As he was in jail, this is number 8. Let me check. It's number 81 we're looking for. Yeah, so this is the one here. Now, if you live on this street, and I'm showing your house as a murder site, bear in mind I've not double-checked that there've not been any renumbering of the streets. I didn't have time to do that far in the search, so before to panic and think your house is a murder site, double-check that there was no renumbering of the streets. So that's where they lived. So yeah, he had been sent to prison after hitting his mother-in-law, and the time he spent in prison, his wife had been staying with a family friend, Mr. Day. Now, according to the mother, there was no chance that her daughter would have done anything sexual with Mr. Day, but since that day, he had been very jealous of Day, and apparently when he was judged, he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've committed murder, but she was a bad wife to me." And he had literally used the hammer that he had just picked up from his mother-in-law a few minutes earlier. Anyway, I've got a flat for you here. Well, I think it's one of those. I have actually lost the little screenshot of the map, so I can double check, but I know it was very, very close to the murder site. So it's one of those. What side of the street, I don't know. And it's a 1-bedroom to rent. Let me show you the photos. So 1-bedroom, hold on, make sure I'm not showing you anything wrong. There we go. So we're looking for a 1-bedroom to rent over here. How much do you think that would cost you in this lovely, quiet street of Islington? I actually really like Islington. If I was banned from South London, if I was not allowed to live anywhere south of the river ever again, and I had to move up north, I think I'd like to live in Islington. So we're looking for a 1-bedroom monthly rent. How much would you pay? 1-bedroom monthly rent. Natasha says 2,675. It's a bit less. The church is looking lovely in the background, but it's not a church. I'll show you in a moment. 3,000 says Trish. Mitzi, 2,000 down. I think you're the closest one so far. It's a little bit less. It's only 1 bedroom, so it's only for a couple or a person alone. Well, you could fit much more than a couple in a 1-bedroom here. Sometimes you could have 5 or 6 people sharing one, but yeah. One of the bedroom I had in Clapham Junction once, I was told that before me there were 5 Brazilian boys living inside. So sometimes you can fit more people. But Trish, it's a bit more. Laurie, you're not too far either. Ronnie, you're very, very close as well. You guys are quite spot on. Let me show you the answer. Where are we? There we go. So 2,200 a month. It's about average, to be honest, for a 1-bedroom flat. Anyway, let me move those images out of the frame and I'll show you the beautiful church that is not a church. So this beautiful church, it's actually now apartments. They have, I went to count on the doorbell earlier, 22 flats inside. So it's been decommissioned and now it's an apartment block. That's quite cool to live in a church. You'd probably be blessed all the time. You've got God on your side, whatever you do. But yeah, it's interesting. They've got interesting windows as well, so those long church windows. It's funny, why is everyone getting all those ads? I've definitely not changed anything. I hope it's not going to be like that all the time. Apologies, I really don't mean to bombard you with ads. Didn't click anything different. Because you can choose the amount. They tell you conservative, so I usually click conservative, so obviously I'll make a bit less money, but it doesn't bother you. I mean, ideally, I'd prefer to have 0, but you can't, if your video is not monetized at all, then the algorithms are not going to suggest this to anyone. But I didn't click anything different. I always put the minimum. That's weird. Yeah, they still have the glass, but I don't think it's stained. It's just those little windows, but not colored. Anyway. There's another very shocking story that happened in a street called Linden Street, just a few minutes away. I went to film it earlier because although it's only 10 minutes away, it's a very, very residential road. So I did a little video. Let me show you. I'll show you the video as we walk. So this is the street. On that street, I don't know which number because it's been renumbered. It often happens after a location becomes a murder location. So that's the case of Celestina Sumner. Celestina lived with her husband Carl, and they had a servant that was 14 years old. The servant was Rachel, and she slept in the kitchen on the floor. Apart from that, she was very well treated and she was fairly happy with the job. And that night in 1856, the lady of the house, Celestina, went out. She told the little Rachel, I'm going out for like half an hour. I'm going to Murray Street. I want you to be in bed when I come back. The little Rachel said, yes, sure, okay. Of course, she was a teenager, so of course she didn't do it. She actually started working on the little apron that she was working on, sewing. And half an hour later, Celestina came back, and the little girl jumped back into bed, pretending to be asleep. Now, hold that story there, because I want to show you a beautiful comedy club with some street art from Zabou, the French artist Zabou. So there's probably a comedy show starting right now. So you see all those artists. You've got Richard Pryor, Bill Murray is the second one, Whoopi Goldberg, and of course Mr. Bean. So beautiful art. Zabou, you might have heard of her. We've seen some work from Zabou in some of my tours. And the Bill Murray Comedy Club, it's a great club. It's run by the same company as the Angel Comedy, a bit closer to the station. I have performed there myself a few years ago. There was I think a LGBTQ plus comedy night, and they gave me a spot when I used to do stand-up myself. This is Victoria Wood and Billy Connell. You like her work? Yeah, I like Zabou. But this is commissioned. You know, Zabou always does commissioned artwork. So she's not doing that illegally in the middle of the night. She's got all the time she wants to do it. I think they used to have Charlie Chaplin with a tie, and his tie was going on the pavement. They don't have it anymore. Well, I guess they probably realized that he was a big PED. Anyway. But yeah, I like Mr. Bean. He's actually well done. Anyway, let's get back to our little Rachel. So little Rachel is in the kitchen. She heard Celestina coming back. She heard the keys in the door, so she quickly extinguished her candle, put herself into bed, and pretended to sleep. Celestina opened the door, and then it's like a horror story, honestly. And she goes, "Rachel, you in bed?" We've got some of those cold covers. Rachel did not reply. She was pretending to be fast asleep, and Celestina let somebody come through. Rachel could hear that there was somebody else because Celestina said, "Wrap your feet and go in the parlor." And then she was like, "What are you afraid of?" And she heard, "I'm not scared, Mama. It's just a new place to me. Not been here before." And Rachel kind of opened her eyes very quickly just to see what was going on. So she saw, in your bed on the floor, exactly, Tish, yeah. So she saw a little girl. She was under the impression she had seen the little girl before, but, she was pretending to sleep, so she couldn't have a proper look. Then she heard the both of them going to the basement. And then what she heard was horrible. She heard, You're gonna split my throat. Mommy, no. And then she was like, the little girl was like, you're going to the devil. And that was it. Then she could hear the groaning of the little girl for a little while, but that was it. And she heard Celestina was going up and down. And apparently Celestina even phrased it. She was like, you must be dead now, you little bastard. Then Celestina came back in the kitchen, woke up the little maid. Poor little Rachel pretended to be waking up, and she gave her a big smile because Celestina wanted some warm water to wash her hands. Then little Rachel noticed that Celestina had changed her dress. She left wearing a black dress, and she had come back wearing a dress with some kind of like embroidered flowers and stuff. And eventually Celestina went up to bed. Little Rachel, of course, spent a horrible night, and very early morning she tried to go down to the basement to look, but she was too scared. She turned around. Then she tried again, and eventually she went down and she saw the body. There was no doubt the little girl was dead. She was full of blood. And at 11 a.m. that morning, Rachel's sister came to visit. And Rachel told her the full story, and it's actually Rachel's sister that went to fetch a police officer. They knocked at the door. Celestina opened, and the police officer said, "Oh, I'd like to check your basement." And Celestina was like, "Check my basement? God knows why." Anything came down, and he was like, "Oh, sure, I'll take you to the basement." And of course, then they found the body. Celestina was like, I did not do it. But they went for a deeper search into upstairs, and they found her dress, Celestina's dress, that was full of blood. So it was quite obvious that she had indeed done it. Let me show you, we've got a little brick flat. Some of you might remember that artist. We saw him in Stoke Newington. Basically, when they miss a brick in any of the walls, he takes the measurement and then he creates those little brick flats. So that's quite cool. We saw one by the canal as well when we were here last time. So yeah, his name is Brick Flats, if you wanted to check his Instagram, Brick Flats. Anyway, so Celestina was caught red-handed. She first claimed that she had indeed brought the little girl home, that her name was Celestina Christmas. She was her niece. But then she had no idea what had happened. And when she was asked why her dress was full of blood, she said she had a nosebleed, but no one believed her, of course. And in the persecution, of course, Rachel was a great witness. And the little girl was actually her own girl. She had an illegitimate child. So quite a sad case. She was originally sentenced to hang, but her sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. We don't know why. Very often when ladies kill their own child, they are very quickly classified as insane. It was not the case this time, but yeah, so quite a shocking story. We also have two to very sad account of neglect on the. So this is Essex Road. At the time, it was known as Lower Street. Or Laura Road, maybe. But yeah, so we have two other very sad stories up there. But for now, let me show you one building that you might recognize. I'm not gonna dive in too deep into that murder because we mentioned it before. But at number 22 here, Islington Green, we had back in the day a furniture shop. And 12th of May 1937, the night of the coronation of George VI and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, there was a lot of action. There were a lot of people all over the streets. And the next morning, there's a guy called Frederick Murphy. He gave a note to his girlfriend, Hazel May, telling Hazel to bring the note into the furniture shop that was right here. So it was right here, number 22, but to be honest, it looked more like the one next door at the time. It was a proper shop with a basement. I'll show you the note. I don't know if we'll be able to read much, but that's the note. Dear Stan, don't be frightened. There's a basement, there's a body in the basement. And so that's the note that he wanted to give that he gave to his employer, because he worked as a handyman and casual staff for the furniture shop. And when of course the dear Stan, the employer, got the note, he went down to the basement. There was a dead lady. He contacted the police. The dead lady happened to be Rosina Field. She was a local sex worker. Sadly for Murphy, there were a lot of eyewitnesses that had seen them together the night of the coronation, and there were some witnesses that had told everyone that Rosina was sometimes sleeping in the basement anyway of a furniture shop, and also, let's say that Murphy was very quickly suspected anyway, because he had been involved in a murder case a few years earlier in Walworth, south of Elephant and Castle. That's where I live. He had been bragging into a pub about murdering a lady. He was gonna be taken for trial, but by the time the trial happened, the case was dropped because the witnesses that had heard him brag about the dead lady were actually disappeared. But really, although they couldn't take him for the first murder, Carbolic Kate was that lady in South London. This time they were convinced they had their men, and he hanged. Now I want to show you a statue that you might remember. It's Bob the street cat. It's going to be a bit dark, so we probably won't see him very well, and it's quite busy, but let me show you Bob anyway. You might remember the story of Bob. He oh, it's a doggy. There's a doggy friend as well. So this is Bob. He was a cat that could do high fives. Let me see if I can get a better light if I come here. No, it's quite dark, but anyway, you know Bob. You've seen him before, so I'll move. But yeah, so this is little Bob. He basically saved the life of a young man called James Bowen. James was a young man that had fallen into hard times. He had fallen into heroin. As a teenage boy, he was living in Australia with his mother. And then he tried to come back to the UK to reconnect with his family, and he ended up sleeping rough. He fell into drugs. He was given an accommodation to try to sort his life out, and in that temporary accommodation, one morning, did you see the movie? The movie about Bob? Well, there are two. I only saw the first one. In the movie, the cat literally comes into his apartment. It's not what really happened. The cat was actually sat by his front door, a shared front door, so anyone could have found him. and he had a big abscess. So James took the cat to the RSPCA to cure him, and little Bob was then stuck to James. James used to sell the big issue, and he was also busking on the streets. And because he had this super cute little cat on his shoulders, he was then able to get away from drugs. He was getting a bit more money with busking, and that gave him the energy and the power to stick to it and to leave drugs behind. He's then published a couple of books, and also a couple of movies. So Bob basically saved James. So it really highlights that everyone deserves a second chance, really. And sadly, Bob is now dead. We've got a lot of videos of him because he was an actor. He played his own role in the movies. Well, the first movie at least. Yeah. Anyway, I'm stopping in front of the building here because I have a bedroom for you. Let me check. It's one that I don't say anything wrong. Oops, I forgot when I had a studio for you on the other side of the road. Oopsie, never mind. So we've got a double room in a flat share over here. Let me find the room. There we go. So it's just a room. You're living with a flatmate that you don't know yet. One or two flatmates, I don't remember. So how much would you pay for a monthly rent if you wanted to live here? I don't think it's at the front. I think it's at the back there. So we're looking for a monthly rent. I think because on the ad there was a little mistake at some point. They said All Street, but the pin drop was definitely here. So I'm guessing the landlord probably had a few properties and he just copy cut some of the text. But yeah, monthly rent for one room, so to share the flat with another or two others. I think it was two. 1,250 says Mitzi. You're very close. Someone says 950, I think. Yeah, it's not too far. Let's see if we have more guesses. 500. Oh, it's a bit more than that. Ronnie, you're the closest so far. Michelle, a bit less. Tish, you're very close as well. Very close. It's a tiny room, you know. It's not. Hold on, let me see where I'm crossing. Yes, let's do this. Oops. Down, you're very close as well. Just gonna give it one more minute as I cross. $700, Laurie. No, it's a bit more than that. Perfect. We have crossed. Let me show you the answer. There we go. So it is 1,080. So some of you were very close. Tish, Ronnie, you were very close indeed. And let me go down this way as well because I've got another flat for you down here. This little shop, I love this little shop because they sell, I think they're organic fruit and vegetables. But when they close at night, they often leave a few boxes of vegetables on the streets. You know, those that are not good enough for them to sell the next day, but still good enough to be eaten that very night. So, you know, they could bin them, but no, they leave them on the street for people to collect and enjoy for free. So, very good shop. What are the name of the movies? So the first one is 2016 as well, is a street cat called Bob. And the second one is A Gift from Bob. The first one, I found it for free on YouTube. Probably not good because it's a pirate link. But the second one, I've not actually watched the second one. 20 pounds off, yeah, that was very close. Anyway, there's another flat in this building here. It is a 2-bedroom. So we're looking for a monthly price for 2 bedrooms to rent. A lot of rentals tonight. I didn't find many to buy. So you want to rent a 2-bedroom in that building here. I'll show you the pictures of the inside. It's lovely, decorated with some Banksy canvas, and I'll let you guess as we walk out. What streets are these? This one is called Providence Place, but we're just off Upper Street. So Upper Street is a lovely street that goes all the way from Angel to Highbury and Islington. I like Upper Street because they have a lot of independent shops. Although, well, towards Angel there's a lot of big chains, but as you go up Upper Street you have a lot of little shops that are still independent. 2,200 says Mitzi, 2,200 says Trish, 2K says Michelle. It's a bit more. It's well, it's a fairly new 2-bedroom, fairly new and clean. Down, you're the closest so far. You like this area? Yeah, so do I. It's and it's very, very central. You could be, I mean, you're just above Clerkenwell, and you could be in the city very quickly. You can be in King's Cross and the West End very quickly as well. So yeah, I like Angel. So I'll show you the answer. Oh, Laurie, you're the closest so far. Well done. You guys are getting very good at this game. Let me show you. 3,000. Oh, you lived here, Kurt. Nice. Lovely. So, yeah, I was telling you that there was a horrible case of neglect on the Essex Road, so that's where we were on the other one. The story is again quite shocking. Sorry, there's a lot of stories involving kids tonight. That's the case of a little boy, really. What happened is there was a flat at the top of the Essex Road. A lady was moving out. One of the many lodgers, you know, the flats were often already divided at the time into lots of different little accommodations, and the landlord came just to repaint or get the room ready for the next tenant. And as he walked past the first floor, he looked through a little door and he saw, not a little door, a normal size door, and he saw a little infant that was on a pile of rags. His name was William. He was dirty, very, very dirty, on a pile of rags. The mother was nowhere to be seen. He looked very, very neglected. The landlord did nothing. He came back the next day. The mother was there, but the little boy was still on a pile of rags, and dirty. And the landlord again did nothing. He actually spent 5 hours in the flat above. He did nothing, and he came back the next day, and it was the same. The landlord did nothing. And then there's another tenant, Anne. She came to collect a few items. She had already moved out, but she came to collect a few items. And she spotted the little boy. His mother was not there. He was alone in feces and dirty. So straight away she contacted the authorities. They took the little boy. They brought him to the workhouse, to the infirmary. And sadly, though, it was too late. The little boy died. So that was a straight case of neglect. The mother, Mary Eliza, was gonna go down for manslaughter. She actually ran away. She was only caught a year later. But when she was caught, they claim, there was a witness, Jessie, her daughter, her bigger daughter. They claim that the little boy was always unwell, that he had diarrhea for many months, that no one believed he was going to live more than 6 months. And would you believe she was acquitted? This sounds like crazy for us. I mean, mad to believe today. If your little boy is bad, I mean, you should spend even more time with him and take care of him even more. But no, she walked free. Luckily, there was another case of a similar story, a case of neglect a few streets away towards Kingsland that did not go unpunished. It was kind of a similar story. It was a lady that had given birth to a little illegitimate daughter, Alice. And I don't want to be judging the mother too bad, because at the time when you were a lady, uneducated, a single lady, well, first you didn't choose to have a child, and also the only jobs that paid decent money were the jobs in service. In service, you couldn't have you couldn't have a baby with you. So very often those poor ladies, the only solution was to give their babies to someone to look after them. Someone that might already have kids, and you'll pay them a little fee, and then you could go to work. So that's exactly what that lady did. She gave little Alice to a lady called Susan King that lived towards Kingsland and Dalston. And well, the lady had 5 kids, so if she had been, let's try to go through. I didn't expect, so this is St. Mary's Church. I did not expect the churchyard to be open, so let's go through. They usually close it at dusk. It's going to be very dark, but at least we have a bit of a shortcut. I might be told off, I don't know, but it's going to be very, very dark. Apologies, but anyway, let me show you my face for now. It's probably going to be, you might see a bit more of me because I'm going to be lit up by the screen. Maybe not. Anyway, so yeah, that might not have been the best idea. Anyway, so the little girl was sadly very neglected as well. Susan didn't take any care of her. And let me show you a photo of the graveyard. You might as well see a photo of the graveyard because there's nothing to see. There we go. So if indeed it was bright, you could see all this. And so yeah, the little girl was clearly neglected as well. Susan was actually leaving the little girl alone. She would, she would go to do whatever she had to do, and she left the little girl with her other kids, and the other kids really didn't have any care for the poor little girl. And she was crying and crying. Her mother, she was visiting her at first every week or so, but the visits had become a little bit less frequent. I'm actually in a graveyard at proper dark. So yeah, the visits had become very less frequent. And one day, the little girl was crying and crying and crying. And one of the neighbors, Emma, she decided to go upstairs, to go and knock at the door and complain to Susan. She was gonna give her a lecture about kids. So she knocked at the door. Susan was not there. The kids were there though. So she demanded to see the baby. When she saw the baby, the poor little Alice she had feces up to her neck. She was all wet into her own urine. She had big ulcers on her skin because of the urine, when you stay in the urine for a while. And the neighbor Emma, she very quickly went to tell the police. The police took 2 days to react. Eventually, 2 days later, they sent an officer to come and check. When the officer came, the baby was same in a pool of feces and urine. Very sadly, they took the baby away, but that was too late. They gave her to a lady that was going to take care of her, but that was a bit too late. The little girl died. And that was going to be, of course, a straight case of manslaughter. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. And Susan King actually decided to claim that the little girl was never well and she would have died anyway. She had always been very weak. But in this case, there were too many witnesses. The neighbor, Emma, she had seen the little girl very, very well indeed. The the mother, she stated that when she gave her little girl to be taken care of, she was very robust. So luckily, Susan King went to prison. Not for long enough. She went to prison for about 18 months. But yeah, she was punished. Anyway, to tell you a bit more about the church. So the church, it's St. Mary's Church. And see the graveyard, see the little, the photo at the top, see the little green cabinet. I could be wrong, but I think that was for the graveyard shift. I think that was for the, you know, at the time of the body snatchers. So they'll have a night watch staying in there all night to check that none of the bodies were stolen. Now let me show you the inside of the church. I went earlier and I found it very pretty. It had been bombed through the Second World War. So it was, they have a sign inside that says, destroyed by war, rebuilt by faith. So this is very bright inside. It's quite modern. And in the graveyard we've just crossed, there's a gentleman buried in there. He doesn't have a monument anymore. Well, not that I know of, at least. He's a funny guy. He was known as the most contemptible miser who ever lived. Thanks ever so much, Linda. I don't even know what contemptible means, but the most contemptible miser who ever lived. His name was Thomas Cook. Well, Thomas Cabbage Cook. He was known as Cabbage Cook because, well, I'll tell you why in a moment. He was a gentleman in the 18th century. I think he was born 1725 in Windsor. He had an interesting life, let's say. He started working as an excise officer, some kind of a tax inspector, and he went to check a mill in Tottenham. The mill was managed by a lady, her son and her husband, but the husband died through the inspection. So the lady, the widow, was left in charge of the mill with her son. And as Cabbage was doing yes, Cabbage, Tish, I'll tell you why in a moment. As Cabbage was doing the inspection, he kept coming up with a lot of fraudulent activities. If he was to report that to the authorities, the poor widow would be bankrupt because the fees she'd have to pay would be far greater than the cost of the mill, you see. So he said to her, well, I could report it, or maybe you could marry me. And then I wouldn't say anything. So the poor widow, she had no choice. She said yes. She married him. And I'll tell you the rest of the story as we go, but let me show you before we go. This is the Little Angel Theatre. So it's a puppet theatre. They do puppet workshops and marionettes. They also fabric them, I think, and then they do workshops. I've never been, but it's one of the only 3 puppet theatres in the country. I'd like to go. I'd like to do a workshop on how to run a puppet, to move a puppet and or marionettes. Anyway. Back to Cabbage. So the poor widow, she had no choice. She married him. And then he became, of course, he had all our properties. So suddenly he had a mill, he had all our properties. And also he lived as a gentleman. He would, when he walked here on Upper Street, when he walked in front of a big mansion, he would often fake a fit. He faked some kind of almost like an epileptic fit. So of course the wealthy people from the Georgian mansions, they would run out and help him. They'll offer him a glass of wine or a shot of brandy or something to make him feel better. At first he'd be like, oh no, I couldn't accept. And then he did, of course, have a glass or 2. And then the next day he'd come back, of course at dinner time, he'd come back to say thank you to the families that helped him when he was having this horrible fit, and as he came back exactly dinner time, so they would invite him for dinner, of course, and through the dinner he would say, "Oh, I've got no children. You know, I'm writing my will. Oh, what are the name of your kids?" You know, kind of pretending that he was going to put them on the will. Thanks ever so much, Shan. That's very much appreciated. So he would pretend, and because those family expected a great benefactor, they would then give him some gifts and everything, hoping to be on his will one day. And apparently he was so stingy that he was often seen on the streets at night collecting horse manure to put to give to his cabbage, to fertilize the cabbage. And when he didn't have enough horse manure, apparently he was sometimes seen squatting over his cabbages to fertilize them himself. So an interesting character. As his wife died, he then inherited all the mill and all the properties. In his 80s, when his health deteriorated, apparently he was bargaining with the doctor because the doctor couldn't find a cure. So he was saying no cure, no pay. And then he was bargaining for his own coffin when he died, finally, through his funerals. The ladies on the street were throwing cabbages, rotten cabbages at him and stuff. Apparently he had asked all the wealthy ladies in the area to marry him, but that was unsuccessful. So yeah, he was probably one of the most hated men in the land. He was an early Georgian con artist, really. And when he died, after being buried, they realized that he had a lot of money. He had apparently the equivalent of £9 million today, in today's money. So he had become a very, very rich man indeed. So he's buried. He's probably the most famous. Well, the only person I know, but I don't know him, but the only person I know of buried in the churchyard of St. Mary. Anyway, let me show you this facade. It's quite interesting. See the facade across the street behind the tree there? It's fake. It's all fake. It's meant to look like the house is next door. But let me show you. If I go between the cars here, I'll go a bit closer. You'll see there's no windows. Well, it could be windows blocked up with the window tags, but if you look behind, it's actually a completely modern build. See? So there's only a facade. There's no building. Well, there's a building, but a different building. So that's quite cool. You're throwing cabbage at his memory. Cool. Now, we are now on Florence Street, or Florence Road. No, Florence Street, I think. And let me show you the site of a former tavern, the Florence Tavern. It is a tavern in which they had 3 inquests. In the case of another horrible murder that happened around here, it was one night a lady that went for a prayer, a night prayer, with her 3 daughters. She went to church. Her name was Maria Clark. She had 3 daughters. Charlotte was 14, I think, 14 or 12, were early teens. Elizabeth was 8, and the other one was a toddler. So they went to pray, and as they came back, it was just after 10 p.m. in the evening. The little Charlotte decided to ask her mother if she could get some sweets. And the mother got out half a penny from her pockets, and she said, "Okay, you go to the shop, get some sweets." So, again, we probably would never do that today, but she left her 3 daughters to go to the sweet shop. So the Charlotte and the 2 little sisters. So this is the site of the tavern. It's no longer a pub today, but that's where they had the inquest into the case. So they where did Aaron Cosmi's killing? Oh, he lived in Whitechapel, Red Cloud. So yeah, the 3 little girls they're going to the sweet shop. They bought some sugar sticks, and then they sat on a doorstep, just eating the sweets, when a gentleman approached them. A guy approached them, but he was actually talking to the little Elizabeth, the 8 years old. He said to her, "Oh, would you mind coming to post a letter for me on William Street? I'll give you 2 pennies." And the little Elizabeth said yes. Charlotte, the oldest one, was like, no, Elizabeth, you're not going with anyone. But that was too late. The gentleman had already grabbed the little Elizabeth, and off they went. So Charlotte was panicking. She grabbed the toddler in her arm, and she started to follow them. But of course, she's only 12. She's got a toddler in her arm, and she's much slower than the gentleman. And at that point, Charlotte's hat flew off. So she dropped the little one to go and pick up her hat, to put her hat back on, to grab the little one again. And as she did that, the gentleman and Elizabeth had disappeared. They were nowhere to be seen. So the poor little Charlotte was panicking. She ran home to tell her mother and father what had happened. There was a search. The police was looking everywhere. The little Elizabeth was never to be seen again. There were, of course, a few articles in the paper, but after a few weeks, a few months, no one was talking about it anymore. Until 9 months earlier, when there's a gentleman, Martin, a very stressed Martin, that stepped into the police station with a very odd story. Now, little break in the story. So this is the Islington Town Hall. It is here. Sorry, just stepped on something disgusting. 29th of May, I think it was, 2014. That's where they had the first gay wedding, and the streets of Islington were full of gay wedding supporters, and that's where his story happened. So, gentlemen, two men, it was. Anyway. Back to our story. No one gave up, but there was no trace of the little Elizabeth. And that day, this guy called Martin stepped into the police station 9 months later with a weird story. He told them that he had been, he heard on the street two men, William and William. It's always difficult to remember the names when I'm telling you those stories, because they're all called William anyway. All those Victorian and Georgian stories, they're always called William, or sometimes you might be lucky and have a Richard or a Thomas, but there are so many Williams. Anyway, so William and William were talking, and the Martin guy, he heard, they talked about a skull that was found at their workplace months earlier. And he confronted them. He was like, what are you talking about? And they said, yeah, it's Stanley Stratford. He found the skull in the flower bed. And he told the manager, John Rowe, they worked in a nursery, in a child nursery. And he told the manager about the skull, and the manager told him to bury it back. Of course, Martin found it a very weird story indeed. So he went to. Thank you. So he went to tell the police, and the police officers, of course, sent someone to the nursery. So someone was sent to the nursery. They looked into the flower bed. They did find a few bones, but they appeared to be dog bones. So there was nothing there. But then they found Stanley, the guy that had racked the flower bed 9 months earlier, and he stuck to his story. So the police went back. They looked into the flower bed again, and then they found pretty much a full body, a full skeleton of a little girl, about 8 years old. It was, of course, quite difficult at the time to say for sure whether if it was the little Elizabeth or not. He didn't have DNA or anything like that, but she was the only girl of that age that was missing in that area. So the police, of course, very quickly talked to George Rowe, because his behavior had been a bit odd, telling his staff to bury the head back. Yeah, but, he said it was because he didn't want to tarnish the reputation of his nursery, why not? And And he very quickly pointed the finger towards one of his staff, a guy called William Henry Clark. See, William again. Apparently, William Henry had a little fondness for young girls, and he had allegedly assaulted 2 girls before, and he said it must be him. So the police went to arrest Clark. They showed Clark to the little Charlotte. She did not recognize him. But then, and there was actually an eyewitness as well that had seen a man with a little girl by the nursery that night, and he did not recognize Clark either. Now, George Rowe somehow had a very precise memory of that night 9 months earlier. He told the police that that very night Clark was out. They used to live together in the same accommodation, and he had just recovered from a bad headache, and he had told his landlady to not to welcome Clark again inside. He had no authority in the matter. He was just a tenant, like the other one. But somehow the landlady obliged, and when Clark came home about 11, she had refused him entry. Now, neither did the landlady remember the date, neither did Clark, but Clark actually said he went to his mother that night. So they did remember that there was a night where he was not welcome at home, but he said he went to his mom, and they actually asked his mom, and she confirmed. Now, you'd expect a mother to lie for your child, but there's actually a family friend that knocked at the door the next morning, and apparently Clark opened the door. So he was at his mom. So, Rowe was lying. Anyway, little pause in our story, because we have a bedroom in there. Now, this is actually a very good deal. If I didn't have an accommodation, I would take it. Well, it's a short-term rental. It's just for a few months, so that's probably why it's cheap. So it's a lovely bedroom in a flat share. I think it's a gay flat share. It's short term, so it's probably not the full price. They probably put it a little bit cheaper just to find someone for the summer. But how much would you pay monthly for this lovely bedroom in a great area? And as I'm telling you, it's a great deal. How much do you think you'd pay? For me to say it's a great deal, it's a great deal. It's actually cheaper than what I'm paying. So how much would you pay, Trish? It's even less. But that would seem like a good price if it was long term. It's even cheaper than that. Michelle, I think you're quite spot on. Let me show you the answer. Let me see. There we go, 700. So, Tish, you are very close as well. Yeah, it's a gay flat share. Well, I think it might just be the landlady and another person, but yeah, on some websites you can put your preference if you want gay people, straight people, or at least gay friendly. If I remember right, it was a gay friendly at least. Anyway, back to our story. So Clark looks like a good suspect. He worked at the school, he had the keys to the school, he was accused of having slept in the greenhouse that night, but as we've just proven, he was actually at his mother, or at least people claim he was. Now, George Rowe, his behavior had been suspicious anyway. You have a skull in your school, and you don't do anything about it, you rebury it. And if you know that your staff has been accused of assaulting, I mean, why are you harboring a PED, And through the court trial, Clark actually, to defend himself, he was actually trying to to show everyone that George Rowe was not who he claimed to be. And to be fair, Rowe actually admitted using a fake name. And Clark was trying to show everyone that Rowe was actually a guy called Nicholson from Trudeau in Cornwall. But the jury and the judge didn't find the line of inquiry interesting, and they went back to Clark. And the girls that he had allegedly assaulted in the past, they came, and it turned up to be true. Apparently, he did have, there were some misconduct with those girls, and then Rowe had got him to sign something and make an apology to the mothers so they wouldn't go to the police. There were 3 girls, but 2 of them, apparently, it was true. So Clark actually went to prison for the 2 cases of assault. Sadly, the murder of the little Elizabeth was never solved. Everyone believed it was Clark, but the jury concluded that there were not enough evidence to convict anyone. So it went on as committed, murder committed by persons or persons unknown. Was it Clark? Probably, but Rowe had a very suspicious behavior as well. So we'll never know now. Now, we were talking earlier about the roads maybe not being much safer in Victorian times or in the 19th century in general. You can see my bicycle. That's we're reaching the end of the tour when you see my bicycle parked somewhere. So yeah, there was sadly a tragic accident on this very street in 1838. There was a little boy, 7 years old, called Edward. He was playing on the sidewalk here, and he was hit by a dray, those horse and carriages with 2 wheels. The dray literally ran off. Some witnesses of the accident grabbed the little boy. They took him to a doctor's surgery. Sadly, he had lost too much blood. They run after the cart driver, the dray driver. He was arrested. He did appear to be drunk. He didn't even notice the boy. So he had run over a boy, and he didn't even notice that the boy was there or hurt. Weirdly, though, although he was drunk, they let him drive his dray back to the police station on his own, and that man was actually jailed for 6 months. He claimed that he was no longer in control of his dray, but with a horse, it's actually possible. Today, obviously, we couldn't say that about a car. The car bolted and went on its own. But back in the day, your horse could do that. Well, although soon, we've got those AI cars nowadays. So one day they'll be able to drive themselves and go crazy. Well, I say that. I had a car. I had a Ford Fiesta that went crazy on its own.
I know.
It was accelerating on its own. That's the reason why I had to give it out, because I took it to the garage a few times and then it wouldn't do it. And then I took my dad in my car. I was like, look at my foot. I'm not pressing any pedal. And the car was going on its own. Then I was at a traffic light and the car would go. So people believed I wanted a race. I had to give it away because all the brake system was screwed because I had to brake all the time. So even cars, they can go on their own, but at the time of horses, of course, that was much more frequent. Anyway, I have a last little story before we go. Here on Liverpool Road, there was a couple in the late 19th century, I think 1885, Maria Clark. She had met a guy called Alfred Shipperfield. They lived outside of London. She lived in a little town called Leighton Buzzard. And she had been adopted by parents that were very much loving. And her mum did not like the boy, and he wanted to take her. They wanted to elope, and they wanted to go and get married in Cork in Ireland. And one day they left and they moved on to London. They were at the train station when they were picked up by a cab. And the cab driver was going to take them to the top of Essex Road, where we were earlier. And, well, the cab was a little bit annoyed because as they stopped out of Euston Station, they stopped into a pub, they went for a drink, then back in the cab. Then they stopped into another pub here, the White Horse, on Liverpool Road here. So the man went into the pub, he bought some drinks. Then well, first he took his wife with him, then he left his wife in the cab, well, wife-to-be. And the driver was like, well, you know what, customer is king, so the customer can do whatever they want. So he then took the cab driver into the pub for a drink. Then the poor lady was called in the cab, so the guy, the husband-to-be, actually ran off to see some friends, and the cab is still waiting there. And eventually the poor lady was called, so the cab driver had to go into the pub to buy a little drink of port for her and a little sandwich. And eventually, finally, they were ready to depart. So finally, the lovely young couple was ready to go. They jumped back in the cab. They were on their way towards the Essex Road. And then someone on the street is shouting at the cab. They're like, stop, something is really wrong there, stop. So the cab stopped, and he could see through the window that something was really wrong. Maria Clark, her head was hanging out of the window. Her throat has been slashed. And he quickly opened the cab doors, and the husband-to-be, Alfred, his throat had also been cut. So they were rushed into hospital. The poor lady could not be saved. Alfred was in hospital for a while as well. When he woke up, he actually told the police officer that he remembered cutting his own throat, but he didn't really remember cutting his girlfriend's throat. And when they looked into the letters they had sent one another, it looks like their relationship was not that easy. Alfred was really jealous, and he was pushing her into marriage. But the medical evidence were not that straightforward. Some of the doctors actually claimed that the gash on her throat might have been self-inflicted. Two of the doctors claimed so. And eventually, though, Alfred was convicted of murder, of 2 accounts of murders, because taking your own life at the time was the same. So he was hanged, but there was still a bit of doubt, because really that happened very quickly in the back of the cab. But no one knows if he really did it. Let's check the letterbox. We don't know, it could be. Oops. Not too old. It's well, it's a bit dark, but it's E2R. Anyway, that's gonna be the end of the tour. I've been live for a while. I guess I should finish it before my battery goes off. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions for me. I'll flip this camera around. Thank you very much for coming tonight. It's always a pleasure to have all of you on board. And let me know if you have any questions before we go. If not, thank you very much for coming tonight. If you want to see a bit more of me, next Tuesday we're going to, where are we going? Somewhere in Hertfordshire. Oh, North Church. I've not been before, but there's an interesting grave I wanna show you there. So yeah, we're going for a lovely village walk on the canal walk in Hertfordshire next Tuesday. Thank you, Shan. Thank you, Red. Thanks, Tish. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, Trish. If any of you were completely new to me, if you've made it that far into the video, you might want to give me a little subscribe, so you can make sure you don't miss out on the fun next time. Thanks, Shaz. Thanks, Lisa. I don't know what the flying pear is. I saw that in the chat, but I didn't know what you guys were talking about. Sometimes when I miss something in the chat, it's like it's too late to go back. And thank you, Mitzi. So yeah, next week we're going to Hertfordshire, and after that, well, we've got to do Bond Street, and I want to take you back to Brixton as well at some point, so I'll be scheduling that soon. Thanks everyone that left me a little tip as well, whether it's here on YouTube or whether you did it on Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal. It's always very much appreciated. It is really thanks to your generosity that I can spend more time creating more tours and doing research and all that. Oh, thank you, Shaz. That's always great to have some new subscribers. Cool. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening or a great morning, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.